Hey, everybody, welcome into the Sportscaster and their son, where sports bridges the gap between the generations. I'm Peggy Kaczynski, 12-time Emmy Award-winning sportscaster at ESPN 1000 in Chicago. I'm the mom, I'm the baby boomer, and I'm the co-host along with Jason. Hey, Jace.
Jason Conander. Hey, Mom. I'm the son. I'm the co-host as well. Generation Z sports reporter, news reporter here at WIBW in Topeka, working in Manhattan, covering all things K-State, having fun doing it and talking some Bears with you, Mom. They're 1-1 through 2 games playing Indianapolis this weekend. Your thoughts after a few games?
Well, I did not expect them to win these games. So I thought that there was going to be some struggles. I thought that, remember, I said 8 to 9 win season. So I thought there were going to be struggles. I just didn't think it would look like this. The offense looks a mess. It just looks like chaos. The offensive line can't protect. The running game can't get going. Caleb Williams is running for his life and resorting to trying to do too much. So, and this trio of receivers, they haven't even been on the field for more than, I think it's 20 snaps, because Keenan Allen is injured with plantar fasciitis. So, you know, the defense looks great, but the offense, wow, they're really struggling. And I thought that the whole idea for this Bears team was to give Caleb Williams an easier transition into the NFL by surrounding him with so much talent. And we haven't seen it.
None of that talent's at the O-line position. We know that much through 2 games. It's been an ugly start in the trenches for the Bears, especially on the offensive side of the football. Not the prettiest showing on Sunday night, but they faced one of the worst teams against the run in Indy on Sunday. Also one of the worst defensive teams, especially in the front 7 in the NFL on Sunday, in the form of the Indianapolis Colts. So even though there's no such thing as an off week in the NFL, this is a really advantageous matchup for the Bears this week, especially at this time, to face a team with a weak pass rush and a weak run stop.
I do think you have to be careful, though, basing things on 2 weeks into the season. As much as Bears fans shouldn't panic right now, I also think that if they looked at Indianapolis, the Colts are not panicking. Stopping the run is actually supposed to be their strength. Now, without DeForest Buckner, that's a different story. This is a team that this could totally catch the Bears off guard. If they're thinking this is a fix-me game, it could easily go the other way, because it's only 2 games into the season, right? Anthony Richardson has thrown a couple of picks. Well, that's the first time he's done that, right? Still a very young quarterback, very young. I believe the youngest in the NFL. Got injured midway through last season. Should the Bears win this game? By all means. How quickly can they improve week to week and improve on all of the issues that were plaguing them last week? Well, that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I think that when you look at the defensive side of the ball for the Colts, like, that's a team that gave up almost 200 yards through the air to Malik Willis last week. And Malik Willis, I mean, was just hoping to stay alive through 4 quarters in that game. So for the Packers to be able to move the ball, they ran the ball a lot and were able to really do whatever they wanted against the Colts last week. So even though they only won by 6, this is a Colts team that, yeah, even though they're not panicking, I maybe would be if I were a Colts fan. So I think that the Bears are in a good spot. Keenan Allen's not going to play again, which stinks. You wish that the Bears had their full array of weapons for Caleb Williams, especially in these early games that are so big for his development. But it's going to be next man up for the Bears. I think that means it's going to be a big game for Rome Odunze. Maybe we'll see the tight ends get involved a little more. We're still waiting for Cole Kmet to explode on the scene this season after a big year last year. So I think that even though, yes, they should win this game, yes, Indianapolis isn't panicking, I think this is a get-back game, and I think that we'll finally see Caleb Williams' first passing touchdown bomb.
Jason, let's bring in someone who knows a thing or two about quarterbacks in the NFL. Chairman of the board at Steinberg Sports. He also runs the Leigh Steinberg Agent Academy for future agents. He has written books on being an agent and athlete representation, a consultant on movies like Jerry Maguire, Any Given Sunday, For the Love of the Game. who else but Leigh Steinberg. Leigh, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you coming onto the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Peggy and Jason.
Thank you so much. So, all right, I want to start with the quarterbacks because that is the biggest issue going on in Chicago right now. Having the number 1 overall pick in Caleb Williams, now they're trying to figure out how to set him up for success. Over the years, you have had, 8 number 1 overall draft picks? 8 number 1 overall draft picks. Is there a formula for success in transitioning these guys to the NFL from college?
I think the first key is a recognition by the fan base, the media, his teammates, and everyone else that the adjustment from college football to pro football is profound, that the game moves quicker, that the degree of separation between a defensive back and wide receiver is much narrower, that the athletes are greater. The easy corner to throw against in college is not there anymore. And the only thing that makes a quarterback better is being out, seeing the field long enough so the game slows down.
Mm.
And what's happened is you take someone like Caleb Williams, and because he was the champion of NILs, and because he signed a big contract, it sets the expectation level up. So that after 2 games now, people are questioning Caleb Williams. He's going to be a great franchise quarterback. This is just the very beginning of his career. And so much of it is supporting cast, like an offensive line. I watched his last game, and he was running for his life. And then it's the supporting cast, but it's also the organization. Do they have a plan? Now, remember, with players like Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes, they sat for a year and learned and picked up. Philip Rivers did the same thing. Carson Palmer did the same thing. And they all sat. Justin Love did the same thing. And they all sat behind a starting quarterback and got to pick it up. This is worth throwing these quarterbacks at an early stage into the deal. And what happens is there's not a lot to write about this time of football season. So you get all this speculation as to the 3 rookie quarterbacks who are starting now. What's wrong with them? Why are the other 3 not set? There are going to be a number of really good starting quarterbacks, but we're too early to really judge. The Bears need to have a plan to build up the confidence of Caleb Williams and not undercut him. But this is the season when someone will throw ridiculous interceptions. This is the season when they'll call timeout at the wrong time. This is the season where they may line up over guard instead of center. So the care and breeding of these young quarterbacks is really important. There was a year in 1999, and the first quarterback pick was Tim Couch. So he ought to have been a Hall of Fame player. Instead, he was a bust. And the third player picked that year was Akili Smith in the first round, and he was a bust. And then you had Chicago's Cade McNown, who the players ran out of town. So they can't have all been bad draft picks. Something went wrong in the care and development of those quarterbacks. And right now we're into instant judgment. Caleb Williams will be just fine. You want him. It may not be pretty to live through some of these early games, but you need to have them happen.
Did you follow Caleb Williams when he was in college at USC? How closely did you watch him, Leigh, and what in his game will translate to the NFL?
Well, first of all, he's got great size. Second of all, he's got terrific arm strength. Third of all, he can move in the pocket. What you're seeing him do is to get outside the pocket. What he needs to do is to sort of slide around inside the pocket, and but that's hard when you see the oncoming rush. He was mostly great at USC and handled himself superbly off the field. He already had a charity that he was involved in. He obviously was a beneficiary of speech training young. He had a father who groomed him for just this role since he was a little kid, and had him at the 7-on-7 camps, had him working with the quarterback expert, had him taking media training, had him do all this. And there were a lot of people with NILs, but it was ubiquitous the amount of times he was on an ad, especially nationally and in Southern California. So he sets the standard on NIL. So he's perfectly prepared. Chicago, with all that the Bulls were great, still is a football city. And you go back to 1985, and I remember at one point there were like 14 players who had their own radio shows in Chicago. And in Los Angeles, the second biggest city, there were none.
Wow.
Just crazy.
Wow. It's true, though.
You talk about confidence and how important of a trait that is for a rookie quarterback. Is this something that is as simple as you script a good opening drive this weekend against Indianapolis, you get Caleb Williams his first career touchdown pass, and then all of a sudden he starts looking like himself again? Or is even that something that takes time to build up and milk and develop for a rookie quarterback?
It takes time, so that what will happen is that eventually the game will slow down. It doesn't slow down in real time. It slows down in the quarterback's perception of it, and he can see more clearly. I remember Warren Moon once telling me that when he was a rookie, he just ran around and threw to the open man. But eventually he'll learn and develop, and it's all about judgment. It's what do you do each time you have the ball? Is this the right time to run? Can you spot the secondary and third receiver? Can you do checkoffs? Can you do all this? And eventually he's going to be fine. But face it, the Chicago Bears are not the Kansas City Chiefs at this point. And so if Patrick Mahomes had the great privilege of sitting behind Alex Smith, who was a very generous mentor and helped him. And so before he ever hit the field, he'd had a year of education.
I think my next question is, how much do you have to kind of shut out what's going on with these other teams around the field or around the league? Like, for example, the Bears faced the Texans last weekend. They have C.J. Stroud. That's the best case scenario for a young quarterback, is what C.J. Stroud has done in his first year in two games in Houston. How much do you have to just focus on the development of who you have in your room and not look around the league and measure it against the development of completely different quarterbacks who are the same age, similar situations?
So remember that football is the most systemic of all games. So let's assume if you can hit the ball in Wrigley Field, you can hit it in Dodger Stadium in baseball. But you might fit really well for the Rams system and not fit so well for another system. And that's why, look at Sam Darnold this year, who's been a big bust and has had a really strong opening. But the key is you're just trying to get the player up to the NFL standard. It doesn't matter that Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow were instant hits. That's their circumstance. That's not going to be the way it is with the Bears. So the micro scrutiny on him, make the assumption he'll throw some bad interceptions. Make the assumption he'll not be patient enough to wait for the secondary receiver or the third one to come loose. Make the assumption that his sense of timing will be off, but he can flat throw the football. and he's got the personality to lead a team. He was a natural leader at SC, and so you can write this down. In a couple of years, they'll have a great quarterback. They didn't do too well with Mitch Trubisky, but I think they picked the right guy. Every other team would have picked the same player.
I want to go back to something you said about the greats that sat, Patrick Mahomes. They all sat behind great quarterbacks or good quarterbacks, and they were given a year at least to develop. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers. We've seen it happening in Green Bay for the last 30 years. They've done that. In the Bears quarterback room, Leigh, they have their backup is a second-year player, Tyson Bagent, out of Division II Shepherd University. Their third-string quarterback is another rookie. They don't have that leadership in that quarterback room. Have you ever had any of your quarterbacks that you represented not have veterans in that quarterback room?
Yes, and but this is a function of the salary cap. And what happens is that if you're playing the starting player and he's locked in, your left tackle's making $20 million, then by definition, his backup's going to be someone materially worse and less talented and less experienced. To have a second quarterback who's not a veteran, that's not good. Remember that in the old days, you had Joe Montana starting, backed up by Steve Young, who's the fifth highest paid player in the whole league as a backup quarterback, backed up by Steve Bono. I mean, you had Rich Gannon and Wade Wilson. You had Jay Schrader and Doug Williams, and I mean, you had great depth. But now the problem is that what you pointed out is the big flaw in the salary cap, which means that if a team loses a critical player, a left tackle, a quarterback, edge rusher, a shutdown corner, and there's no room to replace him. There's no supply to go and sign mid-season. And basically, it's why one of the ways to look at the NFL season, who has their key players intact.
Yeah, that's exactly true. One of the other criticisms, though, with the Bears and general manager Ryan Poles, who overall has done a really impressive job of trying to rebuild this roster, but he did it from the outside in. He went out and got wide receivers, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. They drafted Roma Dunze. They have really good young defensive secondary. They spent a lot of money on their linebackers. They have not addressed the trenches. And it seems to be an issue. Like I look at the Indianapolis Colts, they have a very, very good offensive line. So that allows Anthony Richardson the room to be able to develop, the room to be able to think or not think. I'm not sure what the Bears are doing, but the offensive line issues seems to be what could be something that could really support a young quarterback like Caleb Williams.
Well, they had a fabulous draft last year, and you can't fix everything. It's not like they were a team on the edge of being a great team. And so he fixed what he could, and they'll improve. The two positions that take the most seasoning are quarterback and offensive line. It just takes time. So that young offensive lineman is jumping off sides. That young offensive lineman is holding. The young offensive lineman, they need more time. So I'm going to guess that the line play gets better as the season goes on. And again, they had, I mean, they added a super wide receiver and they added the franchise quarterback. You cannot win in the modern NFL without a franchise quarterback. And let's define that as someone that you can build around for 10 to 12 years, that you can win because of rather than with. And most importantly, someone in adversity who has thrown a couple interceptions. The crowd's booing. The linemen are looking at him like he's on hallucinogens. And what happens now? Can he compartmentalize, adopt a quiet mind, and elevate his level of play in that critical circumstance? Because if you've noticed, most games are coming down to the fourth quarter. Let's say a third of them are blowouts, but 2/3 of them are coming down to the fourth quarter. And more, they're coming down the last drive. So the question is, what will Caleb Williams do in adversity? So the point is, again, it may not be beautiful to watch, but you want him to be in situations that promote growth. You want him to be in a situation where everything's against him. Now what does he do? And that franchise quarterback transcends the moment.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I just think, I got to be that guy and ask if there are too many distractions for Caleb Williams before the season. NIL deals, playing at SC. He had a very public transfer situation from Oklahoma to SC. And then he comes in and he's already getting involved with private equity and all these different endorsements. And do you think that part of this and part of why the number one overall pick hasn't been very kind to the quarterback position is because there are so many distractions? And yeah, this is a really tough position in league to learn, but there are all these other things that he's trying to balance at the same time.
Well, I know he's got a team around him with his father and lawyers and other folks. I mean, they did not use a traditional agent. I mean, anybody would have loved to represent him, but they were pretty firm that they had created. The father's been thinking about this for years, and he put together, they've got a lawyer, a financial planner, they've got a whole group of things, and they're handling most of that. I doubt he's sitting going through various investment opportunities. The other thing about it is, remember, he played in Los Angeles. Now, if you want distractions, this is a very distracting area. And there are so many alternative things going on, the entertainment business and everything else. And SC football pretty much dominates Los Angeles. And so he's already been in the circumstance. In other words, Chicago might be a shock to the system for many people, but not for Caleb Williams. I mean, he grew up in Washington, D.C. He played at Oklahoma, but then he went to SC and the pressure cooker. And we've got more media and more, and SC has a big group of spoiled alums that want to win every game. So I live in a place called Newport Beach, which is also called SC Heaven. Old alums don't die from SC, they just move to Newport Beach. And they're fairly fanatic, so he's had the pressure.
I want to jump in real quick here, Leigh, and something you said about, how he did not have a traditional agent. A lot of people were wondering if there was going to be an issue in signing him. Were you surprised when you heard some of the things that his team was trying to get, and that the Bears had to get approved or disapproved from the NFL, from the league office, like getting paid to an LLC? And a no trade after 3 years. The initial ownership in a team that his father was quoted in the GQ magazine last year. Are any of these things surprising to you? And what is the future for quarterbacks in the NFL when it comes to these rookie deals?
I don't see any great rush for people to do the deals themselves. In other words, agents do much more than negotiate a contract. You plot out second career, you plot out being a role model, you have input into the draft process. My interaction with general managers and everything are a marker as to what we need to work on in the draft process. But look, the draft was not handed down to Moses by God on Mount Sinai. It's not part of the Constitution or the Magna Carta. We accept the fact that there are limitations. But I admire a father who thought outside the square and said, you know what, maybe I could have equity. I have two former players who have equity in franchises. One is Warwick Dunn, and in the past, we've done that. In terms of having everything paid as a corporation, I tried that at one point. The fact that they sat and thought of all the innovative ways that you could be paid, so somehow we've accepted the fact that that makes him like an outlier or too presumptuous. Well, imagine you're a student at SC and you come off the campus and you're going to work in business for a hedge fund. You can propose anything. We draft a player taking away his right to that. So I'm all for the innovation they did. I thought it was very clever. And the fact that it wasn't accepted didn't surprise me because the league would step in. If you have a player set up as a corporation, you can run his endorsement revenue and everything in a different tax way, and it gives the player much more control. So the fact that these things haven't been done doesn't mean they're not good ideas.
Before we let you go, Leigh, and we really appreciate your time, you've represented quite a few Chicago Bears over the years, Cordell Stewart, Jim Harbaugh. Your favorite Bear that you've represented?
Jim Harbaugh. I think it was.
You couldn't talk him into coming to Chicago last year as a coach?
I think Chicago's the best football city in some ways in America. If you go back to 1985 and you look at that Super Bowl championship team, they all became big stars and they all were marketed, and the market supported, I think, 14 radio shows and 2 or 3 cut-ins on television. You don't see that in most NFL cities. And even though the Michael Jordan and the Bulls were dominant and well-loved, nothing succeeds like a successful Chicago Bear team. There's a few other cities. The Washington's like that if the team wins. But here you got the nation's 3rd largest city addicted to football with all those major corporations there. And that's why if I had been Caleb Williams, look, I represented Troy Aikman. His first year, he went 1-15. They said if Jerry Jones had bought the 7-Eleven, they'd have to change the name to the 0-11. But so it was a very rough first year. But if you believe that the ownership, front office, and coaching is in good hands, then that team will improve. You suggest that the offensive line needs work, and it does. But, look at this long term. Troy won the Super Bowl in his in 1992, in his 4th season. And so this may not have the big payoff this year, but just look at this as an investment they're making in the development of what would be the most critical position and a star who can handle it.
No one knows it better than you, Leigh. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Jason, that's why they call Leigh Steinberg the super agent, the Jerry Maguire of agents. He was a consultant on the movie. Many believe that he was who Jerry Maguire was basically framed after and taken after. So Leigh Steinberg, he knows the ins and outs. He's still really up on what's going on in the National Football League and quarterbacks. And he's right there in California where he's watched Caleb Williams over the years. So I thought he was great.
You know what I really noticed about Leigh Steinberg? He really has a Hollywood smile, like an Asian smile. You know, like that's the type of smile that you'd see at the negotiating table, and just a very, very friendly guy, very insightful, and very lucky that he took the time out of his day to talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get to some predictions. What do you got?
It's my favorite part of the show because I get to move the goalposts as much as I like for these predictions. So my first prediction, we've talked quarterbacks, we've talked rookies, and yeah, the fact of the matter is the 3 starting rookie quarterbacks who have starting rookie quarterbacks in the NFL, being Caleb Williams and Bo Nix. And Drake May just played on Monday night, but he's, no longer, they're not a starting quarterback yet. But none of the 3 starting quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels included, have thrown a touchdown pass yet. And so with that being said, I'm going to have to go with a wide receiver to win Rookie of the Year. I think that Marvin Harrison Jr.'s Linsanity type run just started last week. I mean, the first half that he put up was insane. The first half he put up on the Rams was insane. 4 catches, 122 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think that that's the beginning of like a Jamar Chase-like rookie season. So Bill's got him week 1, but I think that MHJ, Maserati Marv, whatever nickname you want to call him, he's arrived and he's here.
Oh, that's a good one. All right, prediction number 2.
Okay, Mom. Prediction number 2. We've got college football. We are very deep into this season now, and we are starting some of the best matchups in the game. Illinois takes on Nebraska tonight. I think that this Illinois team is very good, but we've already done predictions related to Illinois. I think that the Big Ten as a whole is pretty overrated, and with that, I'm going to say that the Big Ten will only have 2 teams in the college football playoff. I think that this conference is going to beat up on each other. You already look at some of the matchups this week. USC and Michigan, that could be an elimination game for the college football playoff because I don't think Michigan would be able to get in with 2 home losses. But USC, if they lose their Big Ten opener to Michigan, they're not going to run the table and go undefeated in conference play the rest of the way. So when you look at the Big Ten and you look at some of the big dogs, like I'm not sold on Penn State and never have been. Michigan's having a down year after winning the national championship. You have Ohio State, Oregon. That's really it. So I'm going to have to go with the Big Ten having 2 playoff teams. I think it's an up year for the Big 12. I think the ACC can have some teams that get in the mix. And the Big Ten, down year. It's a top-heavy year for the Big Ten, but with the way the schedule lines up, those teams are just going to beat up on each other. So I've got Ohio State and Oregon as their 2 playoff teams.
Your final prediction?
My final prediction. That's how I know that I've taken too long on the first 2 when you kind of serve that one up for me. I'm still gonna double down on my prediction that the Bears start out the season 5-1. I think that they're gonna figure something out this week against Indy. I'm gonna take this 3rd prediction and use it as a Bears prediction. They're gonna win this weekend. They're gonna win by more than a touchdown. Caleb Williams is gonna throw at least 2 touchdowns. I think that we're gonna look at this game against the Colts as like, okay, wow, like he really didn't look fantastic those first 2 games. The offense didn't look great at all. And then they clicked. And ever since then, it started to be this slow and steady climb up. Like even if he does what Malik Willis did last week, 180 yards, 40 yards on the ground, 1 touchdown through the air, like that's big progress. So I'm going to say that he does something like that. And over 1.5 touchdowns is what I think. Everyone's like, oh, how can you possibly say that when he hasn't thrown one yet? He's going to throw at least 2. Like they're going to get that confidence up.
All right, I hope you're right. Well, tune in to the Bears postgame show on ESPN 1000 and the Chicago Bears radio network on the ESPN Chicago app. You can get it out of town. That's where you will hear me doing the postgame with Yurko, and we'll break it all down. I hope you're right, Jason. I really do.
I'm low on this Indy team. I'm very low on them. I think.
All right, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I want to thank Leigh Steinberg for taking the time to join us today on the podcast. I want to thank Jack McGrath from ESPN 1000, our producer who helps us get the podcast up on the ESPN Chicago app. Don't forget to check us out on social media. You can follow us on X at TSAHS Pod. That's the Sportscaster and her son pod. And follow Jason at Jason Conander or ESPN Peggy. And what else, Jason, do we want them to do?
Please like, rate, and subscribe if you like our show. It helps boost our algorithm, gets us out there more, gets more listeners for us talking Bears. We're trying to ramp this show up and do more podcasts this season, take advantage of an exciting Bears season, and that is only possible or worthwhile when you at home are listening and spreading the love by sharing this show with your family and friends. So like, rate, subscribe, listen to this wherever you get your audio. It helps us. See you soon, Mom.
And don't forget to follow us on YouTube. If you're listening to us on the ESPN Chicago app or on Apple Podcasts, you can watch us and watch the video version on YouTube as well. All right, Jason, that'll do it. Have a great weekend.
You too, Mom. Stay safe.
Take care, everyone.